Chapter 1103. With Lu Ye's guarantee, Thought Moon Immortal finally withdrew her killing intent. She lightly spat out a word, "Get lost." Yu Daiwei felt as if she had been granted amnesty. She turned around and flew out. Only when she flew far away did a voice come from afar, "Lu Ye, don't forget your promise." The smell of blood filled the air. Yu Huajin's corpse was lying horizontally. Lin Yu was still nervously protecting Li Taibai behind her, her gaze fixed on Thought Moon Immortal. Compared to the old and frail Yu Huajin, the sudden appearance of Thought Moon Immortal undoubtedly made her feel more nervous. She could let Lu Yi freely enter and exit the Dark Moon Forest Pass under the premise of cooperation between the two sides. And no matter what, Li Taibai and Lu Ye had some friendship. But this didn't mean that just anyone could barge into the pass she guarded, especially a powerful ghost cultivator like Thought Moon Immortal. Yu Huajin was killed by her in one blow. If Thought Moon Immortal was willing, she couldn't protect herself. For a moment, she couldn't help but feel a sense of crisis. Fortunately, she also knew that Thought Moon Immortal probably wouldn't kill again. Just as the Myriad Devil Ridge wanted to maintain the fragile peace between the two camps, the Grand Heaven Alliance also had the same idea. "Why is Senior Sister Nian here?" Lu Yi asked. Thought Moon Immortal had a good relationship with Shui Yuan. She was once the right-hand man of Big Senior Brother, so although there was a gap in age, it wasn't a problem to call her senior sister. Especially now that Lu Yi had already reached the Divine Sea. However, he could vaguely guess that it shouldn't be a coincidence that Thought Moon Immortal appeared here. Obviously, she had received some news and had been secretly following Yu Huajin. Otherwise, she wouldn't have grasped the timing so well. "Passing by." Thought Moon Immortal replied lightly. She naturally wouldn't tell Lu Yi the whole story. There was no need for that. Now that Yu Huajin was dead, the biggest threat had been removed. No one would secretly want to kill Lu Yi in the future. Lu Yi was speechless. In vast Sky City, in the headmaster's small courtyard, the headmaster and Zhao Chen of the Heaven Yuan sect sat across from each other, sipping tea. The two of them had been sitting there for several hours already. Neither of them spoke, but they had drunk several pots of tea. Zhao Chen suddenly showed a sad expression and slowly got up. "Brother Tang, this matter is over, goodbye." The sect leader nodded and didn't say anything, nor did he send him off. Zhao Chen walked out of the house and looked up. He saw a sky full of stars and the night sky was bright. He let out a deep sigh. The feelings of the past could only be recalled. Some things couldn't be stopped, and some people couldn't be persuaded. Since they couldn't be stopped or persuaded, they could only nip the problem in the bud. Even if they couldn't bear it, even if they were sad, they still had to give it up. At his level of cultivation, the interests of the sect had long surpassed personal feelings. He had to make plans for the entire Heavenly Yuan sect, and could no longer be someone's senior brother. He had also thought of continuing to stop her, just like he had done the last time. However, it was meaningless. Moreover, that junior sister no longer had any attachments. Now, she was only filled with hatred and resentment. At this time, this kind of obsession was very dangerous. In the end, he had chosen a path of no return. Dark Moon Forest Pass. Thought Moon Immortal had already left with Yu Huajin's corpse. Before leaving, she didn't say much to Lu Yi. It was as if she really was just passing by and casually killed a small character who wanted to harm Lu Yi. Lin Yu breathed a long sigh of relief, as if a big stone had been lifted from her heart. Lu Yi also left. He didn't use the transmission array, but instead flew out of the Dark Moon Forest Pass. After traveling 100 kilometers, Yu Daiwei was waiting. When she saw Lu Yi, she couldn't help but look behind him. She was still worried, so she used her divine sense to investigate the surroundings. Lu Yi looked at her. "What are you looking for?" Yu Daiwei was very careful, and with a sneaky look, she asked, "Did Thought Moon Immortal follow you?" "Lead the way," Lu Yi urged impatiently. Yu Daiwei curled her lips. However, she also knew that if Thought Moon Immortal had followed them secretly, she might not have been able to find her with her ability. So, even if she tried to investigate, it would be useless. Looking Lu Yi up and down, she clicked her tongue in wonder. "So you're already a fourth-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator." She didn't pay much attention before, But when Lu Ye's saber intent and spirit qi surged in the Dark Moon Forest Pass, she suddenly discovered that Lu Ye's cultivation had reached the Fourth Order Divine Sea realm. First update at more than a year ago, Lu Yi, who had been missing for a long time, didn't know where to go. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1103, Divine Sea Realm. Sing Taishan. When Lu Yi returned to the 9 provinces, he had only just broken through to the Divine Sea realm. In just over a year, his cultivation had advanced by 4 minor realms. Such a cultivation speed was terrifying. She faintly realized that it was because he had broken through to the Fourth Order Divine Sea realm that Lu Yi took the initiative to ask to see Senior, because he probably felt that he was qualified to escape from Senior. Thinking about it again, Lu Yi really did have such qualifications. This guy's true strength was always several minor realms higher than his true realm. Thinking back to when he had just broken through to the Divine Sea realm, Lu Yi had already been difficult to deal with. Now, he was even stronger than before. Even if Senior took action, how confident could he be in capturing him alive? What's more, Senior valued him greatly, so he might not necessarily hate him. Worthy of being a person favored by the heavens. Yu Daiwei had never envied anyone in her life, but facing Lu Yi, she still felt a little uncomfortable. Lead the way. Lu Yi urged again. Just as Yu Daiwei thought, now that he had broken through to the Fourth Order Divine Sea realm, he felt that he could escape from Taishan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to see Taishan. There were some things that needed to be discussed openly with him. Not for anything else, but the current situation in the 9 states was not good. The forces in Taishan's hands were an unstable factor, and if he took advantage of this opportunity to cause trouble, it would only make the situation worse, so Lu Yi had to appease him. Also, Lu Yi wanted to talk to Taishan about borrowing his subordinate's strength. He had to return to the blood-refining world eventually, and it would be useless for him to go back alone, so he needed to bring a large number of helpers. Where would these helpers come from? The forces under Taishan's command were the best choice, and they were also ready-made choices. Of course, if it were anyone else, Taishan might not care. But this matter involved his eldest senior brother, so it was impossible for Taishan to remain indifferent. First update at these 2 points were Lu Ye's plan. As for whether Taishan believed him or not, Lu Ye didn't need to worry about it. Before returning from the blood-refining world, his eldest senior brother had given him a lot of instructions. Yu Daiwei led the way with Lu Yi following closely behind. This woman probably had some resentment in her heart, so she deliberately wanted to embarrass Lu Yi while flying. She flew faster and faster, waiting for Lu Yi to beg her to slow down so that she could regain her face. Unexpectedly, no matter how fast she flew, Lu Yi could easily keep up with her, which made her very depressed. The plan in her heart was ruined, so she could only slow down. Flying like before consumed a lot of her energy. Flying from dark to dawn, Lu Yi felt that something was wrong in this direction. This was because from the map, it seemed to be heading towards Fan Mountain. His heart skipped a beat. Is Taishan over at Mount Tung? Fan Mountain was vast and sparsely populated. Now, other than the Jade Blood Sect, there was only the Ziwei Taoist Palace. On many spiritual peaks, there were many caves of rogue cultivators. If Taishan hid in one of the caves and pretended to be a rogue cultivator, no one would be able to find him. Yu Daiwei said, His Excellency deliberately chose that place to meet you. Even I can't confirm his whereabouts, so you don't need to inquire about it. This was normal. For someone like Taishan, it was not good for him to show off in front of others. After hiding for so many years, there were probably hiding places everywhere in the 9 states. After entering Mount Tung, Lu Yi looked down and frowned. Fan Mountain used to be a picturesque place with lush mountains and clear waters, a place filled with outstanding people. However, at this moment, many of the spirit peaks were barren and devoid of life. This was clearly the result of the insect clan's rampage. Fan Mountain was not the only place like this. Currently, most of the 9 states were in the same situation. When they reached a nameless mountain, Yu Daiwei stopped and flew over. Lu Yi followed closely. Landing on the peak, Lu Yi saw a familiar figure waiting for his arrival. It was Taishan. Beside him was a burly figure, but looking at his dull expression, it should be a Dao soldier. Lu Yi could not help but think of Dao Shisan. When he returned from the blood-refining realm, Dao Shisan did not come back with him. Presumably, the long-distance teleportation consumed too much energy, so Jiuzhou's Tianji cut off Dao Shisan's teleportation and left him in the blood-refining realm. Sit. Tai Shan smiled warmly, making people feel like they were bathing in the spring breeze. Lu Yi didn't stand on ceremony and sat across from him in a carefree manner. The first time he saw Tai Shan, he was still young. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1103, Mysterious Seeing Tai Shan. After all, he was only a 5th-order True Lake Realm cultivator at that time, but now he was a 4th-order Divine Sea Realm cultivator. His cultivation had crossed an entire great realm. Moreover, he had seen dozens of cultivators stronger than Tai Shan and had been trained by them for several months. Lu Yi could now be considered an experienced and knowledgeable person. It could be said that in the 9 states, there was no one who could move him in terms of power and influence. Moreover, Tai Shan was not an overbearing person. He had always given off a warm and amiable feeling. Yu Daiwei sat quietly to the side and took out a tea set to boil tea. Little friend, why are you looking for me? As the tea fragrance filled the air, Tai Shan looked at Lu Yi with a smile. No matter what Lu Yi wanted from him, for him, Lu Yi taking the initiative to contact him was what he wanted to see the most. Their last contact had left a deep impression on Tai Shan, and he had a general understanding of Lu Ye's character. Therefore, he knew that if he wanted Lu Yi to submit, force would not work. He could only persuade him with reason, move him with emotion, and plot slowly. The current situation in the 9 states was a good opportunity for him. As long as he could solve the problem of the insect plague, he could set off a wave of momentum and let the name of primal chaos spread throughout the 9 states, attracting people to join him. He had prepared everything. Now, all he needed was Lu Ye's nod, and the 3rd faction, Primal Chaos, would appear out of nowhere and clear the calamities of the 9 states. At that time, whether it was Primal Chaos or Lu Yi, they would become the saviors of the 9 states. With such kindness, would there be any need to worry about Primal Chaos not being able to carry forward? Please enter them. Com in your browser to view. Chapter 1103, Mysterious Seeing Tai Shan. Chapter 1104. At that time, Lu Yi would stand in front of the stage while he would hide behind the scenes. The 2 sides would work together to gradually erode the power of Haotian Alliance and Wanmo Ridge. One day, there would only be 1 camp left in the 9 regions. At that time, there would be no more confrontations between the 2 camps, and there would be no more endless battles and killings. For this goal, he had concealed his identity and prepared for decades. Now Lu Yi, a person who was favored by the heavens, had appeared. It could be said that the time, place, and people were all right. Everything was complete except for the east wind. While Tai Shan was thinking about it, Lu Yi was also pondering. He was thinking about how to lay his cards on the table with Tai Shan. He didn't have that much patience and time. He wasn't good at schemes and tricks. His experience and knowledge in the blood-refining world were his unique advantages. Therefore, some things were better to be straightforward. Just like the strategy he used to deal with Yu Huajin. Therefore, he said, "Senior brother Tai Shan, please excuse me." Tai Shan looked at him with a puzzled face. He didn't know why Lu Yi suddenly called him senior brother. Such a title was not to be casually called, especially under the premise that his subordinate Yu Daiwei had once captured Lu Yi alive and detained him in a small secret realm for several months. Lu Yi stared at him with burning eyes and said calmly, "There is a birthmark the size of a fingernail on your left buttocks near the waist. There are 3 hairs on it, 1 long and 2 short. The longer one is darker in color." The smile on Tai Shan's face suddenly became stiff, and the corner of his eyes twitched visibly. Yu Daiwei, who was quietly brewing tea, couldn't help but raise her head. Her eyes widened as she looked at Lu Yi. She instinctively felt that Lu Yi was talking nonsense, but it was a little unusual for him to talk so much. She turned her head to look at Tai Shan with a look of inquiry. If she didn't have enough willpower, she was afraid that she would ask if it was true. Tai Shan noticed her gaze and turned to stare at her. Yu Daiwei quickly lowered her head and continued to brew tea. She looked down, but in fact her ears were almost pricked up. Her curiosity was burning. "What are you talking about, little friend?" Tai Shan frowned. The way this conversation unfolded was completely different from what he had expected. In his mind, Lu Yi might come here to ask him about some more secretive matters, or perhaps ask about the mysteries of the disc. He had already thought of many excuses, so he wouldn't hide too much from Lu Yi, because he felt that. Why right now, Lu Yi had enough qualifications, but the moment Lu Yi opened his mouth, Tai Shan. Lu Yi continued to expose him. "Senior brother has a sword wound under your third rib. You were injured by an 8th order divine sword cultivator when you were 30. Senior brother once liked a woman named Mei, but that woman thought that senior brother's appearance was mediocre and his background was ordinary, so she didn't take a fancy to senior brother. In the end, she followed a handsome disciple of a great sect. As a result, they both died in a great battle. Senior brother was sad for a long time and even shed tears. So after that, senior apprentice brother didn't like those young and inexperienced girls anymore. Senior apprentice brother prefers more mature women who are more charming." Yu Daiwei, who had been listening attentively, quickly straightened her body, intentionally or unintentionally revealing a myriad of amorous feelings. Also, senior brother's alcohol tolerance is bad. If he doesn't use his spirit chi to dissolve the alcohol, he will get drunk after a single pot. Every time he drinks too much, he likes to brag and then find someone to fight. After the fight, he will find a random place to lie down. Once, senior brother accidentally entered a farmhouse and was picked up by a widowed woman. "Enough!" Tai Shan quickly interrupted Lu Yi, the corners of his eyes twitching. He really didn't dare let him continue. If he did, he would lose all prestige in front of his subordinates. He snorted coldly. "I really didn't know that Nian Yuxian is a gossipy woman who likes to gossip behind people's backs." Lu Yi looked at him calmly. "Senior brother thinks that senior sister Nian told me these things. Otherwise, senior brother really thinks that senior sister Nian knows so many secrets? I have worked with her for many years, and we are like siblings. What does she not know?" Although he said so, he still had some doubts. It wasn't strange for Nian Yuxian to know ordinary secrets. After all, they had been together for so many years. But how could Nian Yuxian know the length of the hair on his birthmark? Other than himself, only one other person knew about this kind of thing. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1104. Secret after a great battle, when the blood was washed away in the river, that person even reached out and plucked those 3 hairs. When he thought of this, his heart trembled, and he looked at Lu Yi in disbelief. Lu Yi said lightly, "It seems that senior brother has some guesses." Tai Shan's expression changed, and his aura began to fluctuate. Yu Daiwei's expression also became serious. She had never seen her lord like this. "Impossible," Tai Shan shouted in a low voice. "Everyone who knows senior brother thinks that you have been dead for many years, but in fact, senior brother is still alive and well. Senior brother can fake his death to escape. Why can't others do the same? I buried his bones with my own hands." Tai Shan stared at Lu Yi. Lu Yi said, "Then senior brother, do you know how I know your name? I have never mentioned you in front of senior sister Nian." As he said this, he slowly stood up and walked in front of the Dao soldier. He raised his hand and pointed at the Dao soldier's heart. Yu Daiwei said warily, "What are you doing?" Lu Yi said, "The refining method of this kind of Dao soldier is flawed, so the Dao soldier refined has very low intelligence. And if there is a special method, it is very easy to make them like this." With a push of spiritual power, the Dao soldier suddenly closed his eyes and fell to the ground softly. He snored and fell into a deep sleep. Tai Shan watched quietly. Even someone as calm as him was extremely chaotic at this moment. This was because he suddenly realized that something that he thought was impossible seemed to be the truth. This made him really incredulous. "Senior brother, if you still don't believe me, I can swear on the heavenly secret oath." Lu Yi sat back down again. Tai Shan didn't say anything. He tried to calm the chaos in his mind. After a long while, he said, Do you think that the heavenly secret oath still has the ability to restrain you? Lu Yi frowned. Senior brother, what do you mean? The heavenly secret claims to be fair and just, but in fact, it is also biased. Especially for people like you who are favored by the heavenly secret, there will always be tolerance. If you don't believe me, you can try. If he didn't say it, Li didn't care too much. Now that he said it, Lu Yi remembered something. When he swore the heavenly secret oath in front of you Dai Wei, he did not feel the restraint of the heavenly secret oath. He turned to look at you Dai Wei and said, Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi respectfully requests the heavenly secret oath to bear witness. This disciple likes this woman very much. If I dislike her in the slightest, may I be struck by lightning. After waiting for a moment, there was nothing unusual. Yu Dai Wei looked at him with her eyes. Lu Yi showed a troubled expression. I originally wanted to swear on the heavenly secret oath to gain senior brother's trust, but now it seems that this method doesn't seem to work. I don't know how to make senior brother believe me. I believe. Lu Yi raised his eyebrows and looked at him with some surprise. Tai Shan said, in this world, only he and I know the refining method of Dao soldiers. It could also be that I obtained some handwritten notes or something that was passed down. Tai Shan shook his head slowly. He wouldn't be so bored as to record these things. He looked up at Lu Yi. He is really still alive. Lu Yi nodded. He is alive and well. Tai Shan showed a puzzled expression. If a person like him is still alive, how could the Jade Blood Sect be so lonely? How could he not stir up the storm all these years? Because he is no longer in the 9 regions. If he is not in the 9 regions, then where is he? A region called the Blood Refining Realm. Lu Yi picked up the tea in front of him and took a sip. Senior brother, have you ever thought about why I lost contact with you for more than 2 years after I was detained in that small secret realm? Where did I go during that time? You went to the Blood Refining Realm. Tai Shan sensed something. Lu Yi nodded. When I was detained in the small secret realm that day, Dao 13 was guarding the entrance of the secret realm. I had no way to escape, so I thought of a way to break the foundation of the secret realm. Originally, I thought that after the secret realm collapsed, I would be able to escape. Who knew that when the secret realm collapsed, I did not return to the 9 regions. Instead, I was sent to the Blood Refining Realm. The situation of the Blood Refining Realm appeared in front of Tai Shan as Lu Yi explained. He heard Feng Wujiang raising the banner there and creating a pure land for the human race. In the Pure Land, even the dozens of old seniors who had been famous for a long time were under his command. Tai Shan couldn't help but laugh out loud, revealing a gratified expression as if he was worthy of being called Tai Shan. He even had a trace of fascination. When he heard that the human race lived a hard life in the Blood Refining Realm and that the Jade Blood Holy Land had to be besieged by the Blood Race every few years, his expression became solemn. Yu Dai Wei was even more dumbfounded. Her cultivation was indeed higher than Lu Ye's, and she was more knowledgeable. This chapter is not finished. Chapter 1104, Blood Refining Realm Secret. There were many, but she had never experienced anything as bizarre as Lu Ye's. She finally understood why His Excellency had chosen Lu Ye. For someone like him who was favored by the heavens, the things he had experienced were unimaginable for ordinary people. When a lot of information about an entire realm was presented in front of Tai Shan, the last bit of doubt in his heart disappeared. What Lu Yi said was too bizarre, but after careful investigation, there were no flaws. Lu Yi wouldn't deliberately fabricate such a realm just to deceive him. Without personal experience, these things couldn't be fabricated. After a long time, Lu Yi finished talking about the Blood Refining Realm. Tai Shan keenly sensed the problem. As you said, the Blood Race's encirclement will continue, but the Jade Blood Holy Land's outer defense line has been broken. Won't it be very dangerous when the Blood Race attacks next time? That's right, so I have to rush back before the Blood Race encircles the Jade Blood Holy Land. Moreover, I have to bring a group of people back. The Jade Blood Holy Land doesn't lack top combat power, but they lack numbers. So senior martial brother Tai Shan, if you still remember your past friendship with my eldest senior martial brother, I want to ask you for help. Essence // first update of Book Pavilion. Please enter. To view the latest update. Chapter 1104, Blood Refining Realm Secret. Chapter 1105. Lu Yi had also considered whether he should report the matter of the Blood Refinement Realm to Grand Sky City so that Grand Sky City could organize manpower. If that was really the case, it would save him a lot of trouble. However, this was ultimately a matter of another realm, and Grand Sky Alliance might not be willing to interfere. Mobilizing troops from one realm and going on an expedition to another realm was extremely dangerous, and there might not be many benefits to be gained. It was very difficult to form a large-scale organization. This was different from the last time when the cultivators of the 9 states had killed their way into the Peerless Continent. At that time, the Peerless Continent had already been enveloped by Jianghu of the 9 states, and cultivators could obtain military merits by killing enemies there. Moreover, the battles on the Peerless Continent were only limited to the Cloud River tier, and the cultivators were very active. Update without error thus. If Lu Yi really wanted to bring helpers over, he could only think of a way himself. Tai Shan's side was undoubtedly a very good choice. Lu Yi did not know how powerful the forces under Tai Shan's command were, but from the few interactions he had, Tai Shan's tentacles might not have reached the upper echelons of the 2 great camps, but the forces he secretly controlled were definitely not weak. Otherwise, he would not have the intention to establish a 3rd camp. Since he had this determination and courage, then he should have a corresponding foundation. If he could agree to this matter, when the time came, he would be able to secretly mobilize people, and the number of people he could bring over would definitely not be small. When? Tai Shan asked. Lu Yi shook his head. I'm not sure, but I know that I will definitely be summoned by Tianji again. This was a vague feeling. After all, Tianji could not just send him to the Blood Refinement Realm for no reason and leave him alone after seeing the suffering of the people there and the Jade Blood Holy Land on the verge of collapse. If that was the case, then his trip to the Blood Refinement Realm last time would be a dry joke, and Tianji would not do such a useless thing. He believed that Tianji sent him over last time with a deeper meaning. Thus, when the time was right, he would definitely have a chance to return to the Blood Refinement Realm. This was something that Lu Yi firmly believed ever since he returned from the Blood Refinement Realm. I can agree to this matter, but you have to promise me one thing. Lu Yi sighed and said, what senior brother Tai Shan mentioned, my eldest senior brother also told me that the 3rd camp isn't reliable. Since ancient times, the Haotian Alliance and Wanmo Ridge have been opposing each other for thousands of years. Such a situation is deeply rooted in people's hearts. Even if senior brother really creates a 3rd camp, it will only make the situation more chaotic. Back then, eldest senior brother also had such thoughts, but he gave it up in the end. That's why he handed that thing over to someone else for safekeeping. Eldest senior brother said that he understands your painstaking efforts and original intentions, but he still hopes that you can temporarily give up this idea. The situation in the 9 regions is already worrying enough, but at least it's clear now. If you still want to do so, you can make a decision after you go to the blood refining world and talk to him. If you still want to do so, he won't stop you anymore. Instead, he will help you. Tai Shan suddenly smiled. From the looks of it, he is still alive. Huh? Lu Yi frowned and looked at him. He immediately reacted. Tai Shan had never fully believed him, but when he told him about the token to establish a 3rd camp, he truly believed him. Because even eldest senior brother's wife who kept it was not clear about the function of the token, and thought Moon Immortal was also not clear about it. As for Lu Yi, if eldest senior brother did not personally say it, Lu Yi would not dare to believe that there was such a strange thing in this world. Today, I came here mainly to tell senior brother about this. Senior brother can think about it quietly. If you have a decision, just let senior sister Yu send me a message. Yu Daiwei was in a trance. Originally, under Lu Ye's request, she brought him to see his honor. She thought that this trip would achieve his honor's wish no matter what. Who knew that after a conversation, they seemed to have turned from enemies to friends. He even called her senior sister Yu. It made her feel embarrassed. In addition, the current situation in 9 states is unstable, and the common people are suffering. I ask senior brother Tai Shan to be merciful and not easily stir up the situation. Tai Shan laughed, In your opinion, what kind of person am I? Lu Yi told the truth. In order to achieve my goal, some people will do anything. Tai Shan seemed to have not expected Lu Yi to have such an evaluation. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "It seems that what you said is not wrong, but to be honest, I hate conspiracies and tricks the most, and I also hate those who live behind the scenes and play tricks the most. When I followed your eldest senior brother, I didn't have to care about anything. I just needed to let go of my shoulders and do it. Wherever your eldest senior brother pointed, I would lead the army to fight. However, people will always change. Different environments, different responses. I didn't expect that such days would come back one day. Lu Ye, you underestimate me. What I just asked you to promise is not about the creation of primal chaos, but when you return to the blood-refining realm, I will follow you. I want to see with my own eyes whether what you said is true or false. If it's true, I'll thank you. If it's false, I'll kill you. Even if you're Wu Zhang's junior brother in name, I won't show any mercy." Lu Yi nodded, "No problem. When the time comes, senior brother won't be able to slack off even if he wants to." Tai Shan stretched out his hand to him and looked at him with burning eyes. "The heavenly secret oath is useless to you, so I won't make you swear. I look forward to that day." Lu Yi raised his hand and clasped his hands together, his voice calm and firm. "That day will come, and it won't be long." Yu Daiwei watched quietly from the side. Even though she was already an 8th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, and even though she wasn't young, she still couldn't understand how men got along with each other. However, she understood one thing. Lu Ye's visit this time seemed to have taken care of her sex, sir, and Sir seemed to be quite willing to be taken care of by him and was even looking forward to it. What kind of charisma did this character, who had stirred up a great storm in the 9 provinces in the past, have that even senior fell head over heels for him? She was suddenly looking forward to it. "Since you call me senior brother, I don't have anything good to give you, so consider this a meeting gift." Tai Shan suddenly raised his hand and sent something flying towards Lu Yi. Lu Yi caught it and found that it was a wine jar. However, he wasn't naive enough to think that it was really just a jar of wine. Just as he was puzzled, Tai Shan threw him a jade slip and said slowly, "The biggest problem in the current situation of the 9 provinces is how to solve the problem of the suppression of cultivators by the magnetic field deep underground. If this problem can be solved, then the cultivators of the 9 provinces can kill their way into the insect path, go deep underground, and solve the insect disaster from the source. Right now, all the major continents of the 9 provinces have sent out medical and alchemy elites to study this problem and have made some discoveries. For example, the insect blood of the insect race can slightly block the suppression of the magnetic field, but the effect is not great. What is recorded in the jade slip is a special method to refine the insect blood. The jar contains the refined insect blood. If this insect blood is smeared on the ground, it has a very obvious blocking effect on the magnetic field. I have had people try it. After smearing this insect blood and going deep underground, even if they reach the end of the insect path, they will still have about 60% of their strength left." Lu Yi was shocked. 60%? Tai Shan nodded his head. 60%. This was an astonishing ratio. Lu Yi had experience going deep into the insect path, so he clearly knew how terrifying the suppression was. He was a 3rd Order Divine Sea cultivator, but when he reached the end of the insect path, he would only have the strength of a Spirit Stream Realm cultivator. Therefore, even if someone as strong as the headmaster was, the strength he could display in that kind of environment was not much stronger than his. However, if he had 60% of his strength left, the sect master would be able to display the strength of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. In this way, his ability to protect himself would be greatly increased. If he could find more masters at the sect master's level to join forces, he would have a chance to kill his way out of the insect path and into the insect race's great sealed world. At that time, as long as he blocked the entrance and stabilized his position, the army of the 9 provinces would follow closely behind. Lu Yi immediately understood the importance of this jar of insect blood and the refining method recorded in the jade slip. It could be said that in today's situation, these 2 things were simply the saviors of the 9 provinces. This was a pleasant surprise. He came to Tai Shan this time just to lay his cards on the table and appease him while seeking some help to kill his way back to the blood-refining world. He never thought Tai Shan would actually give him such a great gift in the blink of an eye. Clearly, he had also realized that the current situation of the 9 provinces was detrimental to his plan to save the blood-refining world, which was why he was so eager to resolve the problem of the 9 provinces. Otherwise, it was impossible for him to take something like this out so easily. What puzzled Lu Yi was where this special refining method had come from. First update at as if he had seen through this, Tai Shan smiled. Don't underestimate the heritage of the 9 provinces. The refining method I obtained came from the research of a group of alchemists and medical cultivators in the Mist province. However, the most crucial results have been intercepted by my people, so the research over there has reached a bottleneck right now. However, I believe it won't be long before they can completely refine it. By then, they'll be able to come up with this refining method again. What he implied shocked Lu Yi, as this meant the forces under Tai Shan's command had already come into contact with the Mist province. If the Mist province was like this, what about the other provinces? First update it, the shadow stone I got Dai Wei to send you before recorded the source of the insect plague. I have the complete recording here. I'll give it to you later. Lu Yi was rather embarrassed. I won't lie to senior brother. Actually, I've been to that great secret realm. Tai Shan looked at him in surprise, but he came to a realization very soon. No wonder you're not interested in those effects at all. So you've already been there. He had already been to the secret realm in person, so he obviously would not be interested in the recordings there. If someone else had said that, Tai Shan would have refused to believe it so easily, but since it came from Lu Yi, there was no room for doubt. People who were favored by the heavenly secrets of this generation could always do things that regular people could not, and they would receive the mysterious protection of the heavenly secrets when they did things. Take what happened today as an example. Lu Yi had chosen this time to find him, discussing many secrets with him, and he had given him the refining method for the insect's blood. Was that not a form of guidance from the heavenly secrets? Please enter .com in your browser to view it. Chapter 1106. Originally, Lu Yi planned to return to his sect after meeting Tai Shan. After all, it was just nearby. He missed his second senior sister and master after not seeing them for a long time. However, after getting the jar of insect blood and the jade slip that recorded the special refining method, he could only extinguish the idea in his heart. He bid farewell to Tai Shan and hurried to Haotian City. The sooner he reported these things, the sooner 9 regions could organize people to attack the insect clan's secret realm and solve the problem of insect plague. The current problem in 9 regions was already very serious. Not only the problems that cultivators had to face, but also the problems that mortals had to face. The insect plague had been raging for several years, causing mortals to be unable to farm. Even if there was surplus food in previous years, it was almost consumed now. Every human gathering place was tightening their belts. If this situation continued, there would inevitably be a large number of mortals starving to death. At that time, the foundation of the cultivation world would be shaken. On the way, he sent a message to the hierarch and briefly explained. Half a day later, he arrived at Haotian City and went straight to the hierarch's small courtyard. The hierarch was waiting. Lu Yi presented the insect blood and the jade slip, and the hierarch carefully examined them. After a while, he asked, "Did Tai Shan give you these?" That's strange. Why did he suddenly change his temperament? The hierarch was puzzled. Since Lu Yi told him some things about Tai Shan last time, the hierarch had been secretly investigating Tai Shan and the Chaos Organization. However, because Tai Shan was very well hidden, there had been no practical results. The hierarch knew that under the current general situation of 9 regions, such a hidden force was extremely unstable. If Tai Shan continued to be dormant, it would be fine. If he suddenly rose up, it would only make the situation in 9 regions more chaotic. Extremely unstable. If Tai Shan continued to be dormant, it would be fine. If he suddenly rose up, it would only make the situation in 9 regions more chaotic. Moreover, for Tai Shan's scheme, the more chaotic the situation in 9 regions was, the more advantageous it would be for him. because only in chaos would people seek change. Unexpectedly, he took the initiative to give such important things to Lu Yi. In the current situation, these two things were really important. I told him about the blood refinement realm and eldest senior brother. In fact, when I returned from the blood refinement realm, eldest senior brother had some instructions for Mount Tai. I talked to him in detail, and it could be said that I persuaded him. The sect leader understood. He admires your eldest martial brother very much. He probably listens to your eldest martial brother's words. That makes sense. Headmaster, Tai Shan doesn't wish to reveal his existence. Therefore, I'm afraid that the source of these two items will fall on this disciple's head. This was also what Tai Shan had specifically instructed Lu Yi before he left. Lu Yi could understand Tai Shan's advice. He believed everything Lu Yi had said, but not all of it. Therefore, he still had to be prepared for the possibility that Lu Yi had lied to him. Without the blood refinement realm, Feng Wujiang would have died long ago. If that was the case, then he would still have to carry out his original plan, which was to build momentum for Lu Yi in advance. The special extraction method of insect blood was simply a life-saving straw for the current 9 provinces. At such a critical moment, anyone who took out this item would be the benefactor of the entire 9 provinces and would receive great prestige. Of course, from Lu Ye's point of view, Tai Shan's action was meaningless. The blood refinement realm did exist, and eldest senior brother was still alive. However, since this was Tai Shan's request, there was no harm in agreeing. The sect leader pondered for a moment. That's fine too. Compared to the great merit of infiltrating the insect race's great secret realm, this merit was undoubtedly greater. Last time, the sect leader had taken away the merit with the intention of protecting Lu Yi. After all, so many top experts had failed to enter the insect race's great secret realm, but Lu Yi, who had just advanced, had entered. It was hard to guarantee that some people wouldn't be afraid of Lu Yi. However, the situation this time was different. This was not only a great merit, but also a great kindness. If the insect blood refined by the special method was really useful and could help the 9 provinces solve the insect disaster, then all the cultivators and even mortals in the 9 provinces would owe Lu Yi a favor. At that time, who would dare to harm him? That would be committing a crime against the whole world, and the people of the 9 provinces would poke at him together. After an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Yi left Haotian City and leisurely flew to Shocking Waves Lake Pass. This trip to take the initiative to contact Tai Shan for a detailed discussion was undoubtedly a very wise decision, and it also eased his heavy mood a lot. What he had to do now was very simple, he just needed to wait. Whether the insect blood was useful or not, the sect leader needed to personally try it. After all, without practice, it would not be persuasive. If it was really useful, the sect leader would convene a meeting to discuss the next action plan. For the time being, Lu Yi could not participate in such high-level meetings, nor did he bother to participate. In some ways, his mentality was somewhat similar to Tai Shan's. He was more used to following orders or doing things according to his whims. He was not the kind of person who would make decisions. The following days passed by peacefully. At Shocking Waves Lake Pass, Lu Yi cultivated in seclusion while refining explosive fire spirit stones and twin chi linking array discs. It had been a month since he broke through to the 4th order. Under the cultivation environment of the 9 provinces, coupled with his special cultivation method, his cultivation speed was very fast. Now, he could basically maintain the speed of advancing 1 realm every few months. With the improvement of his cultivation, the efficiency of refining also increased. Coupled with the fact that he was refining with his clone, the production of explosive fire spirit stones and array discs had greatly increased compared to before. Half a month later, the sect leader sent a message. The insect blood was useful, and as Tai Shan said, even if a cultivator reached the deepest part of the insect path, they could still maintain 60% of their combat strength. This time, the sect leader reached the end of the insect path and saw the door that Lu Yi had seen before. However, he did not rush in rashly because there were countless insects in the insect race's great sealed world. If he really rushed in rashly, it would be difficult for him to do anything alone. On the contrary, he would easily put himself in danger. Therefore, after reaching the end of the insect path and seeing the door to the insect race's great sealed world, the sect leader immediately turned back. He urgently gathered people and held a meeting. At the meeting, he took out the remaining half jar of insect blood and the jade slip that recorded the special refining method, which shocked many higher-ups of the military province's Grand Heaven Alliance. With his personal experience and experiments, his words were undoubtedly very persuasive. Everyone realized that this was an important turning point in the fight against the insect plague in the 9 provinces. The military province had already shared the refining method with the other 8 provinces without hiding anything. They even told the myriad demons Ridge about it. This was not a matter of the Grand Heaven Alliance alone. This was a problem that the entire 9 provinces had to face, so the myriad demon Ridge had to contribute. Now, what the 9 provinces' cultivation world needed to do was to refine as much insect blood as possible. Once they had enough reserves, they could mobilize all their forces and kill their way into the insect race's great sealed world. As for the source of the special refining method, the sect leader, as requested by Wuxia, pushed all the blame to him. Such a great contribution from the military province made the higher-ups of the military province radiant. Some people did not understand how Wuxia, a newly advanced Divine Sea Realm soldier cultivator, came up with this refining method. However, compared to the appearance of the refining method itself, these were minor details. There was no need to delve too deeply into it. Everyone had their own opportunities. After all, Wuxia was a person who was favored by God. Even if he said that he picked it up from the roadside, who could verify it? It was also at this moment that the 2 camps officially entered the period of large-scale cooperation. This was a major change with epoch-making significance. It had been 2,000 to 3,000 years since the emergence of the 2 camps. They had always been in constant confrontation and disputes. This was the first time that they had sincerely cooperated. It was destined to leave a strong mark in the history of the 9 provinces. Since they were working together, they naturally should not hide anything. Therefore, the myriad demon Ridge took the opportunity to request the Grand Heaven Alliance to share the twin spirit-connected formation plate. The myriad demon Ridge had been drooling over this thing for a long time. Although they tried to get some formation plates from the Grand Heaven Alliance to study, they awkwardly found that no one could mass-produce it. At present, the matter of the 9 regions cultivation world's counterattack on the insect race's great secret realm was in full swing. For the cultivators living in 9 regions, no matter which camp they came from, fighting against the insect race was an inescapable duty. The myriad demon Ridge's intention was obvious. They could contribute and cooperate with the Grand Heaven Alliance sincerely. After all, they were both maintaining the stability of the 9 provinces. However, if they wanted the horse to run, they had to feed the horse well. The myriad demon Ridge would send out as many formation plates as the Grand Heaven Alliance could provide. If the Grand Heaven Alliance could provide a large number of formation plates, the entire myriad demon Ridge, from the Divine Sea Realm to the Spirit Stream Realm, would definitely send out all their forces. It was reasonable for the myriad demon Ridge to make such a request. Among them, this was because everyone knew that once the problem of the insect plague was solved, the relationship between the 2 camps would return to how it was before. By then, the Grand Heaven Alliance would have the help of the formation plates while the myriad demon Ridge did not. They would definitely be at a disadvantage in the confrontation. This was a rare opportunity. If they did not get some benefits from the Grand Heaven Alliance, they would not get another chance. This was their only chance to obtain such a strategic resource in large quantities. The Haotian Alliance also knew that it was hard to reject the request of the myriad demons Ridge. If they really wanted to reject it, they couldn't possibly let the Haotian Alliance deal with the insect disaster alone. It didn't make sense. The 9 prefectures belonged to everyone, not the Haotian Alliance. How to give and how much to give were the problems that the Grand Heaven Alliance had to face now. Of course, the pressure was mainly on the Force Province because the formation plates came from the Force Province. Currently, the higher-ups of the 2 camps were arguing. However, it was foreseeable that once the preparation for the counterattack against the Insect Clan's Mystery Realm was completed, the argument would instantly reach a satisfactory result. Currently, All kinds of news were spreading in the 9 provinces. At the same time, the Jade Blood Sect's Lu Ye's name was known throughout the 9 provinces. He was the refiner of the twin chi-connected formation plate, the scout of the insect clan's mystery realm, and the discoverer of the insect blood extraction method. Regardless of which of the 3 contributions, it was enough to make one famous. With the 3 contributions, even though Lu Ye was only at the spirit stream realm, it was enough for him to become the most dazzling person in the world. Not to mention that he was already at the Divine Sea realm. Please enter .com to view the latest update. Chapter 1107. The sect master's message was mainly to ask Lu Yi what reward he wanted. After such a huge contribution, the Grand Sky Alliance had to express their gratitude. If they didn't do anything, they would be disappointed. Rewards? Lu Yi thought for a moment. What exactly did he lack? Ordinary cultivators might lack battle credit or merit points. But Lu Yi didn't lack either of those things. He had long since accumulated several million battle credits, and was on his way to reaching the 10,000 mark. No one would believe him if he said it out loud. Based on his current accumulation of military merits, if he were to go to the Department of Official Affairs for a promotion, not to mention a protector, he would probably even be able to become a battalion commander. However, Lu Ye's requirements for military ranks were not high, so he was too lazy to get one. Even if he were to be promoted, it would only increase his monthly salary by a bit. Then fire spirit stones and demonic beast cores, especially poison pills. Lu Yi made his own request. Although he could obtain a certain percentage by refining explosive fire spirit rocks, the talent tree was a bottomless pit. No matter how many explosive fire spirit rocks there were, it would devour them all. There was nothing wrong with storing a little more. Moreover, he felt that his talent tree was going to change again. Because during this period of time, his talent tree had swallowed many fire spirit stones, but there were no signs of new spiritual patterns being activated. As for the demonic beast core, it was mainly prepared for Hupo. The poison pills were left for Wuxia. This woman left the cloudy river battlefield and didn't have a suitable cultivation environment. Giving her more poison pills would allow her to grow faster. Just as he finished his message with the sect master, Wei Ling reacted again. Lu Yi checked and realized that it was an order from the Heaven's Gate. They were told to collect bug blood from True Lake stage and above. This was obviously to prepare the raw materials for refining bug blood. It wasn't a troublesome matter. At the fissures, the cultivators at the 2 mountain passes had been killing bugs. It wasn't a problem for them to collect some bugs. Moreover, this order wasn't just sent to this side. All the mountain passes at the front line must have received the order as well. However, there were requirements for collecting bug blood. Normal bug blood wasn't of much use as its quality was too low. It couldn't be refined into anything valuable. Only bug blood from True Lake stage and above could be used as raw materials. If it was from Divine Ocean stage, the effect would naturally be better. Lu Yi passed the order to the fishers and didn't interfere. He continued to cultivate. The entire 9 regions had entered a state of intense preparation. All the cultivators were waiting for the critical moment to arrive. Under such an atmosphere, the 9 regions showed a different style. Even those mortals who didn't cultivate were aware of some subtle changes. The insect disaster had swept through the 9 regions for more than 3 years, causing the people in the entire territory to have no way to make a living. Although there were cultivators protecting the mortals and there were not too many casualties, in these 3 years, no one could see any hope. No one knew when these days would end. But now it was different. The cultivators all understood that the matter of counterattacking the insect race's secret realm had been put on the agenda. It wouldn't be long before this kind of suffering would end, and the 9 regions would return to its previous state. The night breeze blew gently as Lu Yi walked out of the cultivation room. There is no moon tonight, and the sky is full of stars. He was not a person who could cultivate in seclusion for a long time. He was still too young and could not endure that kind of temperament. Therefore, every time he was in seclusion for a period of time, he would casually come out for a walk to relax. When it came to cultivation, it was all about being relaxed. His cultivation speed was already very fast. If he had a more comfortable mood, he would be able to cultivate better. Not far away, there was a conversation between two people. They were the cultivators in charge of guarding the city wall of the mountain pass. They seemed to be arguing about something. There were only more than 50 cultivators standing guard at the mountain pass. However, because Lu Yi basically lived in seclusion and came and went with the help of the teleportation array, he did not have much contact with the soldiers under his command. The only people he was familiar with were Yu Huang and a few others. His figure flashed and flew to the two people's side. The two cultivators were startled. After seeing Lu Ye's figure clearly, they hurriedly saluted, "Sir." Lu Yi responded with his hands behind his back and asked curiously, "What are you arguing about?" One of them said, "Sir, it's like this. Xiao Lu said that there is an extra star in the sky. I said that there are so many stars in the sky. How can you be sure that there is an extra star?" He then argued with me. "There is an extra star." Lu Yi raised his head and looked at the sky. The other younger cultivator, Xiao Lu, blushed and said, "There really is an extra star. Sir, I am on duty here every night. When I have nothing to do, I just look at the stars. Although I don't know how many stars there are in the sky, I can still tell if there is an extra star or less." "Where?" Lu Yi asked curiously. Xiao Lu pointed in a direction and said, "Sir, look over here. There should only be 17 stars here, but now there is an extra star. I vaguely noticed it a few days ago, but I wasn't too sure at the time. Looking at it again today, this extra star is obviously brighter." Lu Yi looked in the direction of his finger and found that there were indeed 18 stars there. However, he was not sure which one was extra. However, he could not say anything about this kind of thing. Moreover, the number of stars was related to the observation environment. Perhaps Xiao Lu did not notice it before, or perhaps the star was covered by clouds. Both were possible. Either way, the cultivators on duty were extremely bored and wanted to find something to do. Without looking around, he said, "You can quarrel, but don't hurt the harmony." "Sir, don't worry. We are all as close as brothers. We are used to quarreling. Please don't laugh at us," the older cultivator said. Lu Yi nodded slightly and headed towards the heavenly secret hall in a flash. Teleporting, he went to the fissure to investigate. After more than 2 hours, he came back and relaxed his muscles and bones in the fissure. He killed some insects and started cultivating again. The preparation of the 9 prefectures took 3 months. This could not be helped because they needed to gather enough insect blood. This was not something that could be gathered in a short time. When the insect blood reserve reached the requirement, the counterattack on the insect race's great secret realm was immediately put on the agenda. Lu Yi was summoned and rushed to Haotian City from the Shocking Waves Lake. When he arrived at the sect master's courtyard, the sect master was waiting for him. Lu Yi was puzzled. "With my cultivation level, why do I have to attend the meeting?" On the way here, he had asked the hierarch and learned that it was Pang Jin who asked him to attend the meeting. The meeting had always been a meeting of the highest level of the Haotian alliance in the military state. Only the hierarch who was in the elder group or the head of a department like Qian Wudong was qualified to attend. Ordinary 8th or 9th order Divine Sea Realm cultivators are not qualified to attend, but Lu Yi, a 4th order Divine Sea Realm cultivator, was called. He could not help but feel flattered. The sect master led him to the Light Harmony Hall while explaining, "Because you have once entered the insect race's great secret realm, you know the situation inside the best. Although you brought back images, it is not as real as seeing it with your own eyes, so you need to make some explanations. In addition, you may need to be the vanguard. Of course, no one will force you to do this. You can consider whether to accept or not." Vanguard, Lu Yi frowned. It was not easy to be a vanguard, especially for such a large-scale operation. What does the sect master mean? The sect master was silent for a moment. If you can guarantee your own safety, you can accept this. But if you can't, you can refuse directly. There is no reason to let a young man like you take on too much responsibility. Lu Yi nodded slightly. Following the sect master to the Light Harmony Hall, Lu Yi stepped inside. In an instant, all eyes were on him. One had to know that those sitting here were the highest level figures of the War Province's Grand Heaven Alliance. All of them were 9th Order Divine Sea Realm cultivators, and there were only a dozen of them in total. They were the leaders of the War Province's Grand Heaven Alliance. It could be said that their words and actions determined the overall direction of the War Province's Grand Heaven Alliance. Some people looked at him with scrutinizing eyes, some with interest, and some with obvious admiration. Lu Yi followed closely behind the hierarch and came to the side of the table. The hierarch sat down and gestured, "You sit too." Lu Yi obediently sat down beside him. Suddenly, the battlefield mark moved. Lu Yi quietly checked it and found that it was Gan Wudong who sent him a message. "Don't be so nervous. One day, you will be able to walk in here by yourself." Looking up, Lu Yi saw Gan Wudong smiling at him across the table. Lu Yi pretended not to see him and did not reply. At the head of the table, Pang Zhen knocked on the table. "Everyone is here. I want to announce something. After the high-level discussions of the two camps, we will launch a full-scale counterattack on the insect race's great secret realm in 3 days." Everyone had obviously received this news from different sources. Therefore, there was not much of a reaction. Now that everyone was gathered, they needed to discuss the specific operation. This was a large-scale operation that involved the entire 9 states. What kind of people were qualified to participate, how many people each side would send, and how the personnel would be distributed would all need to be carefully considered. They couldn't just send out an order and have everyone rush forward. That would only cause chaos. Because of the limited scale of the insect path, only cultivators above the True Lake realm were allowed to participate in the counterattack. Those below the True Lake realm were not allowed to participate. Not only because of the limited scale of the insect path, but also because of their strength. The insect race's great secret realm was filled with danger. Those with low strength would only cause more trouble and casualties. In such an environment, only cultivators above the True Lake realm could play a role. With this requirement, 90% of the 9 states' cultivators would be excluded. However, the number of cultivators in the 9 states was huge. Even if only cultivators above the True Lake realm were allowed to participate, they would still be able to gather a huge number of people to deal with the insect race's great secret realm. Although the time had been set, how to maintain the unity of the operation was still a problem. Therefore, when the time came, the cultivators from the 9 states would need to enter from different cracks in the ground. They would need to maintain contact and advance simultaneously. Then, they would continue to converge and reach the door at the end of the insect path. Then, they would gather outside the 9 doors and attack the insect race's great secret realm together. Only then would they be able to sweep through the insect race's great secret realm. Chapter 1108. This was the main topic of discussion at the grand meeting this time. Lu Yi sat next to the sect leader and listened to the ministers and members of the elder group express their opinions and views before Pang Zhen made the final decision. He realized that everyone was very brief and did not drag their feet when making decisions. This was probably the style of cultivators. Of course, it could also be that time was limited. The day of the counterattack was in 3 days, so the grand meeting could not be delayed for too long. After listening, Lu Yi had a general understanding of the plan for this operation. Now that the 9 provinces had enough reserves of insect blood that had been refined through special methods, although the suppression of the magnetic field on cultivators was still there, it could no longer stop the 9 provinces' cultivators from counterattacking. This counterattack on the insect clan's great secret realm was divided into 3 stages. The first stage was to kill their way into the insect path from the crack in the ground and push all the way to the door at the end of the insect path. This stage was not difficult. Even if they pushed to the end and the cultivators could only use 60% of their strength, as long as there were enough of them and they cooperated well, they could still gain a foothold in front of the door. Moreover, because the people who carried out this stage were all top-notch divine ocean cultivators, there would not be too many casualties. If they were lucky, they could even achieve 0 casualties. This stage would last for about 10 days. After all, it was a long journey from the crack in the ground to the door, so it could not be done in one go. Back then, Lu Yi hit on the back of the scarab and went deep into the insect clan's great secret realm. It took him a month to go back and forth. When the goal of the first stage was completed, it was time to prepare for the second stage. The time node was in front of the 9 doors. When the vanguard powerhouses of the 9 provinces had gathered, the powerhouses of the 9 provinces would rush into the insect clan's great secret realm and attack the 9 doors. There was only one goal, which was to gain a foothold in front of the door. It was impossible for the vanguard of the 9 provinces to wipe out the insect clan's great secret realm alone. No matter how strong they were, their numbers were limited. Therefore, their mission was to build a defense line in front of the door and resist the insect clan's counterattack. At that time, the reinforcements would be able to continuously enter the insect clan's great secret realm. It was impossible to estimate how long this phase would take, but it was undoubtedly the most dangerous phase. Once they entered the bug race's secret realm, the vanguard experts would have to fight non-stop. They could not retreat, as the door to reinforcements was right behind them. There was no way out, and they could not escape. The bug race's secret realm was filled with bug race members. Where could they escape to? He could only endure it. If he could resist, he would live. If he couldn't, he would die. Or become a pirated dog. When the 9 prefectures' army passed through the 9 gates, all of them headed for the insect race. In the Great Mystery Realm, they would enter the 3rd stage. 9 armies would attack the Zergs from 9 different directions and fight to the death. The plan was simple and clear. There were no tricks involved. After all, the opponent was an insectoid with low intelligence, so there was no need to play any tricks. Furthermore, the environment was limited, so there was no room for any tricks. What the 9 prefectures relied on was the huge number of cultivators and the endless number of powerhouses. They were confident that they would not lose in such a confrontation. You have all seen the interior of the insect race's great mystery realm before. You have studied it and have a certain understanding of the overall environment inside. However, seeing it doesn't mean that you have personally been there. Now, in the military province, there is only one person who has personally entered the insect race's great mystery realm. As Pang Zhen spoke, he turned to look at Lu Yi. The rest of the people also looked over. Lu Yi, I called you here today because you have the experience of sneaking into the insect race's great mystery realm. I hope you can explain the scene in the Shadow Stone in detail. The sect master had already informed them of this matter on the way here, so Lu Yi stood up and bowed respectfully. Lu Yi greets everyone. Since Vice Alliance leader Pang has given his orders, this lowly one will naturally obey. Then I will have to delay everyone for a bit. The sect leader handed over a shadow stone. Lu Yi picked it up and poured his spiritual power into it. In an instant, the scene in the shadow stone appeared in front of everyone's eyes. Lu Yi looked at the scene a little and determined that it was the location when he first entered the insect race's great mystery realm. He then said, "Everyone, please take a look. This great mystery realm is basically not out of the scope of a sealed world space, which means it has an edge. The location of each portal is at the very edge, which is extremely advantageous for our operation because as long as we stand firmly in front of the portal, we won't have to worry about danger from behind. We only need to deal with the top, the front, and the left and right." Although they had seen the scenes recorded in the image recording stone many times, they still listened attentively to Lu Yi's explanation. Some even asked questions. Lu Yi answered them one by one. The scene in the Shadow Stone could basically show the situation of the entire insect race's great mystery realm. Everyone was at the 9th Order Divine Sea realm, so after seeing the scene, they could basically picture the real situation in their minds. After about an incense stick worth of time, Lu Yi finished his explanation. Pang Zhen said, "If you were to join the Vanguard Battalion and act as a vanguard to open a path for the army, would you be willing?" The sect master had also told him about this in advance, so Lu Yi immediately nodded. This subordinate is willing. A 4th Order Divine Sea realm cultivation wasn't weak, and he had many trump cards. What's more, his foundation was more solid than that of ordinary cultivators, so it wouldn't be a problem for him to be a vanguard. Moreover, he wasn't the only one in the Vanguard Battalion. When the time came, he would still need to act together with the other vanguard masters of the war province, so it wouldn't be too dangerous. The sect master obviously understood this, so he didn't say anything definite and just let Lu Yi act according to his wishes. This disciple of his was indeed young, but since he was at the Divine Sea Realm, he should have the responsibility of a Divine Sea Realm cultivator. If he retreated no matter what happened, he wouldn't have much success in the future. Throughout history, only those cultivators who faced difficulties head-on were able to go further than others. Very good. Then you will join the Vanguard Battalion. Pang Zhen nodded with satisfaction. Lu Yi continued, however, this subordinate has a proposal that I would like to ask everyone to decide. Everyone looked over with interest. Pang Zhen smiled slightly. What proposal? Let's hear it. After listening to the 3 stages of this operation, this subordinate felt that the early stage of the second stage was very dangerous. It wasn't easy to establish a foothold in front of the door and build a defensive line. When the time comes, there will be countless insect race swarming over. This subordinate was thinking that if we divert the insect race's attention at this time, we might be able to reduce the pressure in front of the door. Pang Zhen nodded. We have thought about this problem before, but we didn't have any clues. In fact, it would be the best choice to let Yanshi send out those creations, but unfortunately, Yanshi school has declined in the 9 continents, and there are very few Divine Sea Realm cultivators in Yanshi, so they can't be of much use. As for using the beast taming school to control monster beasts, it is even more impossible to talk about. First of all, monster beasts are flesh and blood. Once they appear in the insect race's secret realm, they will become the target of the insect race's attack. There is no way to divert the insect race's attention. Lu Yi asked, what if we use the insect race? Insect race. Pang Zhen raised his eyebrows slightly. This subordinate has a method to control the insect race. Last time, we were able to sneak into the insect race's secret realm because of this method. Therefore, this subordinate is thinking that if I can control enough insect race and let them carry some explosive fire spirit stones, we can enter the insect race's secret realm one step ahead of the Vanguard Battalion and place them in various places. Once the explosive fire spirit stones are activated, it will attract the attention of a large number of insect race, and the Vanguard Battalion can take the opportunity to kill their way in. The time we can buy may not be much, but at that time, it will be worth it, and it will also be more convenient for the Vanguard Battalion to consolidate the front line. Pang Zhen's expression brightened. How many insect race can you control? 1 or 200 shouldn't be a problem, Lu Yi replied casually. Of course, there should be no limit to this number. However, if this plan was to be carried out, it was impossible for him to control too many insect race. There was not enough time, and the insect path space was not big enough to be used. Everyone's eyes lit up when they heard this. Just imagine 1 or 200 insect race carrying explosive fire spirit stones scattered in various parts of the insect race's secret realm. Once the explosive fire spirit stones were detonated, the spiritual energy would definitely be chaotic and the situation would be chaotic. The insect race was extremely sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations. When they felt the fluctuations, they would definitely be attracted. In this way, the pressure in front of the door would be reduced. At that time, they would not dare to say how much time they could buy, but even if it was just 1 or 2 breaths of time, it would be enough to prevent a certain degree of casualties. If they could hold on for more than 10 breaths of time, it would be a great help. This plan was very promising. What do you all think? Pang Zhen turned his head to look at both sides. How could anyone have any opinions? If this could be done, they would be happy to see it happen. Naturally, they would not stop it. Instead, they would vigorously promote it. After quickly reaching an agreement, Lu Ye's proposal was passed. Then this matter is settled. I have already discussed with the Demon City. The location of the Vanguard camp will be at the crack between the Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass. Everyone, please spread the news. The people on the list of the Vanguard camp must gather at the designated location within 3 days. This is the first large-scale joint operation in the history of the War Province, and also the first in the history of the 9 provinces. This concerns the face of the War Province's Haotian alliance, so I hope everyone will be cautious. After the meeting ended, Lu Yi followed the head teacher out of the Light Harmony Hall. The head teacher said, "The war is imminent. Is there anything you need to prepare?" Lu Yi shook his head. "There's nothing to prepare. All kinds of materials are available, so there's no need to buy anything. Then go back to the pass and prepare. The location of the gathering is there. You're also close." Lu Yi leaped up and flew toward the pass. The location of the Vanguard Camp's gathering was at the crack between the Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass. It was unknown whether it was a coincidence or intentional, but for the War Province's two camps, the Shocking Waves Lake Pass and the Dark Moon Forest Pass were the first to join forces. It was quite representative of the two camps, so it was reasonable to choose this place. Chapter 1109. Of the 9 continents of the 9 states, the Hautian Alliance and the Myriad Demon Ridge each held 3. Aside from that, the Military Province, Tian Province, and Ding Province were territories that both sides fought over. Therefore, the Vanguard Battalion in Force Province was composed of the powerhouses from the two camps. Only in such a special period and under such a special environment could such a grand event be seen. Normally, it was very rare to see such a grand event. On the 3rd day after returning to the mountain pass, Lu Yi pushed open the door of his palace and walked out before dawn. Hoopa crouched on his shoulder. Compared to more than a year ago, Hoopo's aura was much stronger. After cultivating for more than a year without stopping and swallowing a large number of monster cores, Hoopo's growth was extremely obvious. After all, it was a strange beast, and it also had cultivating with it. Although its growth speed was not as fast as Lu Ye's, it was much faster than ordinary human cultivators. Although Hoopa was not yet at the level of a divine ocean realm monster, it was not far from it. To Lu Yi, as long as Hoopa was by his side during the battle, he could borrow its strength. Thus, it did not matter if Hoopo's strength was slightly lower. It was for this reason that Lu Yi brought Hoopa with him. The counterattack against the insect race's great secret realm was not a battle that could be accomplished overnight. Any bit of external help was extremely important. Looking up at the starry sky, there were still many stars. Today was undoubtedly a good day. His gaze inadvertently swept across the starry sky, and he discovered that one of the stars there was clearly much brighter than the last time he had observed it, but he did not know why. However, his attention was quickly attracted by a figure on the side. After a brief examination, he said in surprise, "Senior Sister Nian?" Nian Yuxian was actually here. Judging by her appearance, she seemed to be waiting for him. "Ready to move?" Nian Yuxian asked. Lu Yi nodded. "I'm a junior after all, and I can be considered half a host. It's not good to keep those seniors waiting. It's better to go early." "Senior Sister Nian, I'm also from the Vanguard camp," Nian Yuxian explained. Lu Yi understood. With Nian Yuxian's strength, it was natural for her to be included in the Vanguard camp. "Then let's go together," Lu Yi invited. He led Nian Yuxian into the Tianji Hall, and through the teleportation array, they directly arrived near the fissure. The hundreds of cultivators at the 2 mountain passes were still loyal to their duties. They were already familiar with killing the insects that crawled out from the cracks in the ground. Most of the time, the insects would be slaughtered as soon as they appeared. It was still early. Apart from Lin Yu Yuxian, there were no other cultivators in the divine ocean realm. Lu Yi went up and waited Yuxian Yu Yang, and he stood and waited. The sky gradually brightened, and one after another, powerful auras flew over from different directions. The figures that landed were undoubtedly the members of the Vanguard Battalion that had come to assemble here. "You sect. Were you did not dare. You mountain you, and you, they you." Lu Yi was secretly alarmed as he sensed the auras of the newcomers. Although it was known that there were crouching tigers and hidden dragons in the 9 provinces, and that there were endless masters, hearing about it was one thing, and seeing it with one's own eyes was another. Of the cultivators from the Vanguard camp who came to assemble, not a single one was below the 7th order. All of them were above the 7th order, and among them, the proportion of 9th order cultivators reached an astonishing 20%. Based on this momentum, the entire vanguard battalion had at least a few hundred members. Moreover, this was not the full strength of the war province. It was impossible for all cultivators above the 7th Order Divine Sea realm to enter the insect path. Whether it was Myriad Demons Ridge or Grand Heaven Alliance, they had to leave some people behind to maintain the stability of the war province. If a single continent had such a background, what would the entire 9 continents be like? Lu Yi found something interesting. The masters who came to assemble were not clearly divided, nor were they at daggers drawn. Although many of them belonged to different camps, they were still chatting and laughing when they met. This was a rare sight for low-level cultivators. The lower a cultivator's cultivation base was, the easier it was for conflict to arise. On the other hand, the higher a cultivator's cultivation base was, the more they had seen and experienced. They were often able to talk and laugh freely. Lu Yi felt many scrutinizing gazes sweeping over him, intentionally or unintentionally. Among the Divine Sea Realm cultivators present, his cultivation was the lowest, and he was the youngest. On the other hand, it was because of the news that spread. Now, everyone knew that the twin spirit-connected spirit array came from him. Everyone knew that he had entered the insect race's great sealed realm and brought back extremely precious images. Even the insect race's refining method was contributed by him. It could be said that he had played a decisive role in promoting the 9 provinces' opportunity to counterattack the insect race's great sealed realm. In addition, he had reached the 4th Order Divine Sea realm at such a young age. As long as one was not blind, they would realize that no matter how the 9 provinces changed in the future, he would be able to occupy a place. As far as the current situation was concerned, the entire 9 provinces owed him a debt of gratitude. Therefore, although there were many scrutinizing gazes, there was not much hostility. Even if they were wary of him, no one dared to show any hostility on such an occasion. "Ha, I'm late." A hearty laugh sounded. Then, from the direction of Dark Moon Forest Pass, a figure swept over. Behind him were more than a dozen masters. "City Lord." Many masters from Myriad Demon Ridge saluted. Even many cultivators from Grand Heaven Alliance cupped their fists and greeted him. Lu Yi recognized this person as Long Bo, the city lord of Myriad Demon City in the War Province. His status was equivalent to Pangjin from Grand Heaven Alliance. Lu Yi had never seen this person before. However, last night, Long Bo led some Spirit Sea Realm cultivators from the Vanguard Battalion to rest in Dark Moon Forest Pass and summoned his clone, Li Taibai. As the most dazzling rising star of this generation of Myriad Demon Ridge, Li Taibai was naturally valued by the higher-ups of Myriad Demon City. Long Bo was also generous with his praise and reward for his clone. This gave Lu Yi a chance to learn more about this person. After exchanging some pleasantries, Long Bo turned to look at Lu Yi and laughed. "Little friend, you must be Lu Yi, right? You really have an extraordinary bearing." Lu Yi saluted. "Greetings, City Lord Long. Little friend, I know a lot of things about you. If there comes a day when you are not happy in Haotian Alliance, you are welcome to come to Myriad Devil Ridge at any time." As he spoke, he winked at Lu Yi with a meaningful look. Yu Huajin did not hesitate to betray Grand Heaven Alliance and borrow the power of Myriad Demon Ridge to kill Lu Yi. This incident happened in Dark Moon Forest Pass. As the city lord of Myriad Demon City, how could Long Bo not know about it? It could even be said that all the decisions in this matter were made by him personally. He was also the one who ordered Lin Yu to warn Lu Yi so that Lu Yi would be on guard. As soon as he said that, many people from Grand Heaven Alliance frowned. Although they knew it was impossible for Lu Yi to agree to such a thing, poaching someone in front of them was a little despicable. A voice came from afar. "Don't spout nonsense if you don't know how to speak. Nobody will treat you as a mute." As soon as the voice was heard, a few figures had already landed in the field. They were Pang Jin, the sect leader, and the others. Long Bo laughed out loud. "Old Pang, you're late." Pang Jin nodded slightly. "I had some matters to attend to, so I was slightly delayed." One of them was the city lord of Myriad Demon City, while the other was the deputy chief of Grand Heaven Alliance. Regardless of cultivation base, status, or strength, they were all on the same level. They were also the leaders of the Vanguard Battalion's attack on the insect tribe's great secret realm. The two of them gathered and had a brief discussion. After a while, Pang Jin said in a clear voice, "The insect disaster has ravaged the 9 states for more than 3 years, causing the cultivators of the 9 states to be exhausted while the mortals have no way of making a living. Today, we are gathered here as the vanguard to kill our way into the insect path and counterattack the insect tribe's great secret realm. We have a long way to go, so we can't afford to make any mistakes. There's no need to mention the grudges of the past. Today, there are no camps here. Let's work together to destroy the insect tribe." All of them were Spirit Sea realm masters who had been cultivating for a long time. All of them were above the 7th order, so there was no need to mobilize too much before the battle. Everyone knew what they would face when they received the order, so Pang Jin only said a few simple words. Next, they distributed the insect blood. Everyone received a jar, and Lu Yi received one as well. "Wait for me here." After Nian Yuxian received her jar of insect blood, she flew into the distance in a flash. Not only her, but all the female cultivators did the same. The main reason was that smearing insect blood on one's body was a delicate job, so they couldn't miss a single inch. Under the watchful eyes of so many people, it was not easy for the female cultivators to do it. After the female cultivators left, the remaining male cultivators didn't hold back and did their own thing. After a short while, all of them were smeared green all over their bodies. Not even their hair was left out. After the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, everyone gathered again. Lu Yi looked up and saw figures with green skin. He felt that the scene was quite funny. Of course, in the eyes of outsiders, he definitely looked like a ghost. "Let's go!" Following Pang Jin's low shout, he and Long Bo took the lead and landed on the ground. The others followed closely behind. In an instant, the scene became lively. Below the ground, the insects that were still climbing out were in for a bad time. Wherever the Spirit Sea realm cultivators passed, not even a blade of grass was left behind. Lu Yi was mixed in the crowd with Nian Yuxian beside him, so he was bored out of his mind. With such a scene and such a lineup, there was no need for him to take action. What he needed to do was to wait for the people in front to capture some Spirit Sea realm insects alive and use some means to enslave them. The light above their heads gradually disappeared. Soon, everyone arrived at the entrance of the insect path. Pang Zhen and Long Bo were still in the lead, and the others followed. Having experienced going deep into the insect path once, Lu Yi was not unfamiliar with it. The several hundred people moved like the wind, and in a short while, they all killed their way into the insect path. However, due to the limited size of the insect path, they couldn't advance side by side. The entire group formed a line that wasn't too long. Lu Ye's position was arranged to be closer to the front, mainly because he wanted to enslave the insects. If he was too far behind, it would be difficult for him to do so. Nian Yuxian should be responsible for his safety, so she was always by his side. Chapter 11:10. The Vanguard Battalion was invincible as they charged into the insect path. At this depth, the magnetic field's interference was very weak. It was almost negligible. With the addition of the insect's blood, it could block the magnetic field's corrosion. Naturally, it wouldn't affect the strength of the cultivators. With Long Bo and Pang Zhen's strength, they could even kill an insect at the level of a giant insect. Not to mention, the insects they encountered along the way were all below the Divine Sea realm. The formation continued to advance. 90% of the Vanguard Battalion members seemed to have nothing to do. Only the group at the front had the chance to fight. But everyone knew that this was only temporary. The insect path was long. The deeper they went, the more restricted their cultivation would be. In addition, they had to preserve their strength, so it wasn't good to let Long Bo and Pang Zhen stay at the front. After a certain period of time, someone would take their place and allow them to rest and recuperate. 2 hours later, a shout came from the front. "Where is Lu Ye?" I'm coming." Lu Ye's figure flickered. Then when they came to the source of the sound, under the flickering light of the torch, they saw a burly physique cultivator pressing down on a mantis insect. No matter how the mantis insect struggled, it couldn't get rid of the physique cultivator's restraint. This was an insectoid at the spirit sea realm. It was also the first insectoid that the team had met so far. Lu Yi wanted to control the insect, so he couldn't choose a random target. He had to choose one at the divine sea realm. Only then could his plan be guaranteed. The Vanguard Battalion had probably found out about Lu Ye's ability to control the Zerg through different channels. Therefore, when Lu Yi rushed over, many divine senses probed him from the front and back, wanting to know what kind of method he would use. Lu Yi raised his hand and touched the mantis insect's forehead. He sent a message to Nian Yuxian, Senior Sister Nian, please use your divine soul attack. Quickly tear apart the insect's divine soul defense. Although he could do this himself, he didn't cultivate any divine soul secret arts. His divine soul wasn't as strong as Nian Yuxian's. It was more convenient for Nian Yuxian to tear apart the insect's divine soul defense. The Thought Moon Immortal immediately activated her spiritual power. The mantis bug was hit by the impact. It kept hissing and struggling even harder. However, it was held down by the myriad demon's ridge body cultivator and could not resist at all. Lu Ye's divine telekinesis surged. He could clearly sense that the insectoid in front of him did not have much resistance. He easily planted the soul manipulation divine sigil in its mind. The mantis insectoids instantly calmed down. The body cultivator sensed something and said in surprise, "It's all right now." Lu Yi nodded, "All right, fellow Taoist, please let it go." The body cultivator let go of the insect and found that it really did not resist. He was amazed. Amazing! Recultivators from the Beast Tamer school might be able to control the insectoids, but they could not do it so easily. Instead, it required a very complicated process. At the same time, there was a high chance of failure. But on Lu Ye's side, it had only been a few breaths of time, and a divine sea realm insectoid had actually been tamed. He did not understand how this was done. "Is this secret technique of yours useful to humans?" The body cultivator asked a very sensitive question. Lu Yi felt the ears of the people around him prick up. This kind of secret technique was strange and unpredictable. If it was useful to humans, it would be too terrifying. Lu Yi said, "The higher the intelligence, the stronger the soul power, and the harder it is to control. It's basically useless to humans, so it can only be used on these insectoids with defective intelligence." Actually, it is useful. Otherwise, Dao Shisan would not have been able to control it back then. But in this kind of environment, how could Lu Yi give an unsettling answer? He did not know if the body cultivator believed him or not. After a slight nod, he turned around and chased forward. Lu Yi and Thought Moon Immortal also followed, but there was an additional divine sea realm mantis in the team. It bared its fangs and brandished its claws as it moved forward. As they pushed forward, divine sea realm insectoids were constantly captured and enslaved by Lu Yi. 3 days later, there were dozens of insectoids in the team. They rumbled as they moved forward. Lu Yi sat on the back of an insectoid. Thought Moon Immortal sat on the back of another insectoid. The leisurely appearance of the two did not look like they were attacking the insect race's secret realm. Instead, it looked like they were going for an outing, which attracted the attention of many Vanguard camp masters. Long Bo, Pang Zhen, and the others who were leading the charge had already been replaced. This had been done several times already. The coordination between cultivators was extremely tacit, especially when they were all cultivators above the 7th order. Sometimes there was no need for words. Just a simple exchange of glances or body language was enough for them to understand each other's thoughts. Now, the ones taking the lead were the sect leader and a few other body cultivators and weapon cultivators. At this depth, the suppression of the magnetic field on the cultivator's strength had become very obvious. However, because they had smeared insect blood in advance, it was still within an acceptable range. Lu Ye's position was always at the front, but not at the front. As they went deeper, the number of divine sea realm insectoids in the team increased, but correspondingly, the speed of their advance slowed down. Of course, the deeper they went, the stronger the suppression of the magnetic force field. Naturally, they had to be more careful when advancing. Moreover, because they had to capture the Divine Sea Realm insectoids alive, it often took a lot of time. The vanguard battalions of the other 8 provinces did not have this problem. They only had one goal along the way, and that was to kill. Kill all the insectoids they encountered, and not leave a single one alive. Therefore, in terms of advancing speed, the Force province was undoubtedly the slowest. This was verified by Pang Zhen, Long Bo, and the leaders of the other provinces. They encountered a few insects, and now they were all under Lu Ye's command. Agent. On the 8th day of entering the insect path, Pang Zhen suddenly rushed from the back of the team to Lu Ye's side and asked with concern, "Can you still resist?" Although Lu Ye's method of capturing the insectoids was amazing, in the eyes of ordinary people, it was impossible for such a method to be without limits. Logically speaking, every additional insectoid he captured would be a burden on Lu Ye's lightning speed. In particular, Lu Ye had said in the Great Council that the limit should be around 100 or 200 insectoids. Now, the number of Divine Sea Realm insectoids under his control had exceeded 200. That was why Pang Zhen asked. Lu Ye pondered for a moment and said, "It's about time. Although I can still control them, there's no need. More than 200 Divine Sea Realm insectoids are enough to carry out the next plan. More would just be icing on the cake." Pang Zhen nodded and ordered the front. "If we encounter any Divine Sea Realm insectoids again, there's no need to capture them alive. Kill without mercy." At this depth, everyone's strength had been suppressed to only 60%. Moreover, the continuous battles had consumed a lot of everyone's strength. If they encountered any more insects, it would be risky to capture them alive. Killing them directly would undoubtedly be more convenient and effective. One had to know that the counterattack on the insectoid's great secret realm was divided into 3 stages. The first stage was actually the easiest to achieve, and the most dangerous was the early stage of the second stage. The vanguard camp naturally had to preserve their strength as much as possible. The vanguard camp cultivators at the front received the order and advanced at a much faster speed. Another day later, there was a faint light in front of them. In an instant, everyone knew that the end of the insect path was approaching. The source of the light was where the door was. Sure enough, when the formation advanced to the source of the light, a huge oval-shaped door appeared in everyone's vision. The door was like a mirror. As the mirror rose and fell, insectoids continuously walked out of the door. Many cultivators looked at the door and understood that after stepping through the door, they would enter the insect race's great secret realm, which was the source of the insect disaster in the 9 provinces. The first step had been taken, and the next step was to see the progress of the second step. If everything went smoothly, they would be able to solve the disaster that had lasted for several years. "Rest here and recover your spiritual power." Long Bo shouted and ordered a few more people to guard in front of the door and kill any insects they saw. The 9 provinces needed to act together. Although the 9 vanguard camps were already in position in front of the 9 doors and could kill their way into the insect race's great secret realm at any time, the armies of the 9 provinces had not arrived yet. When the vanguard camp went deep into the insect path, teams from all over the 9 provinces had already gone deep through the cracks in the ground. They then gathered at different positions of the insect path and continued to advance. However, because the vanguard camp was clearing the way, the pressure they faced was much less. They only needed to deal with the scattered insectoids they encountered in the forks. Currently, the armies of the 9 provinces were trekking through the depths of the insect path. It could be said that the figures of the 9 provinces' cultivators could be seen everywhere in the insect path. They might be scattered in different forks, but they only had one ultimate goal. They could only wait for the armies to be in position before the vanguard camp could kill their way into the insect race's great secret realm. Otherwise, they would be powerless. Even if everyone in the vanguard camp was above the 7th order, it would be difficult for them to do anything. While the masters of the vanguard camp were resting, Lu Ye was busy. He needed to tie a certain amount of exploding fire spirit stones to all the insectoids he controlled. Otherwise, it would be difficult for the insectoids to cause a large-scale commotion. However, it was different with exploding fire spirit stones. These things were easy to explode and could cause powerful spiritual energy fluctuations. The insectoids were extremely sensitive to spiritual energy fluctuations. Once the exploding fire spirit stones exploded, it would definitely attract the insectoids' attention. Taking advantage of this opportunity, the vanguard camp could kill their way into the insect race's great secret realm and quickly build a defensive line. He was not the only one who was busy with this. There were others assisting him. They were all assigned in advance. Even so, it still took him nearly 2 hours to arrange everything properly. Selection. Lu Yi did a final check. After confirming that there were no omissions, he came to the sect master and Pang Zhen. Disciple is ready. Pang Zhen said, then I'll leave the rest to you. However, you must be careful and prioritize your own safety. The sect master also exhorted, if things go wrong, retreat immediately. Disciple understands. Lu Yi nodded solemnly. Chapter 11:11. In front of the door, Lu Yi put the amber back into the spirit beast pouch and flashed to the back of a sacred beetle. He opened its wings and hid his whole body inside. He constructed the concealment and aura concealing spiritual tattoos in one go. Immediately after, he gave the order in his mind. The enslaved insects connected head to tail and disappeared through the door. The sacred beetle that Lu Yi rode was mixed in with the troops and was inconspicuous. As the light and darkness changed, the feeling of the suppression of the magnetic field disappeared. Lu Yi understood that he had crossed the door and entered the insect race's great secret realm. Lu Ye's ears were full of the sound of insects crawling and flying, as well as the hissing of weapons. He immediately controlled the sacred beetle to fly into the air. After flying to a certain height, he quietly looked down and saw that the door was bustling with insects of all shapes and sizes. The scene was spectacular. In such a situation, if the vanguard camp wanted to stabilize their position, they would have to go through a massacre first. However, once the spiritual power fluctuations appeared, it would inevitably attract more insects. There would be no end to it. He was the vanguard of the vanguard in the war province, using the insects and the explosive fire spirit rock to attract the attention of the insects. However, the other 8 provinces did not have such means. If they wanted to open up a frontier, it would be more difficult than the war province. This would depend on the means of the experts of the vanguard camp. Using his mind to sense the position of the insects under his command, he accurately gave different orders to each insect. Those insects went in different directions one by one, going deep into the insect race's great secret realm. In only 2 hours, over 200 Spirit Sea realm insectoids had been scattered in the range of 20 to 50 miles away from the door. They couldn't be too close, because it would be meaningless if they were too close. They couldn't be too far away, because it wouldn't work if they were too far away. 20 to 50 miles was the best distance. Lu Yi then sent a message to the head teacher. Disciple is in position. The next step was to wait. The 9 provinces' army did not take too long to assemble. After all the people participating in this operation were cultivators above the true lake realm. Moreover, each team had a divine sea realm expert, so the efficiency was naturally not slow. What they had encountered along the way were nothing more than some scattered insectoids that they had encountered at the fork in their path. Once they reached the insectoid path that the vanguard had taken, they would be able to move on without any obstructions. In just 2 days, the armies of the 9 prefectures were in position. The armies of each prefecture were lined up like a long dragon. The dragon head of the army had already met up with the vanguard and was standing in front of one of the portals. However, the dragon tail was perhaps only a few thousand feet into the insect path. It was not that they did not want to go further, but they were limited by the terrain. If the people in front did not charge into the insect race's secret realm, the people behind would not be able to push forward. While lying dormant, Lu Yi received a message from the sect leader. It was time to make a move. He immediately gave orders to the 200 insectoids under his command. Among the insectoids, a mantis insectoid of the divine sea realm suddenly waved his own mantis blade and attacked his companions beside him. Under the sharp and swift slash, Many insectoids were cut into pieces on the spot before they could even react. However, there were some stronger insectoids who were still alive even though they were slashed. Driven by their instincts, they started to fight back against the mantis insectoids. As early as the last time he came to the insect race's secret realm, Lu Yi discovered something. The insectoids here did not live in harmony. Instead, they fought frequently. The stronger insectoids treated the weaker insectoids as food and resources. When the weaker insectoids were attacked, they would instinctively fight back. On the other hand, in the 9 prefectures, there was basically no killing between insectoids. Perhaps there was something more attractive outside. On the other side, a dog insectoid also started to bite its companion beside it. After a short killing, the scene became intense. At the same time, a centipede-like insectoid with a body length of more than 10 feet wrapped around a companion. Its mouth wriggled and bit off the companion's carapace, revealing the flesh and blood inside. Chaos came inadvertently, and it was not just in one place. In the end, the fight between insectoids inevitably came into contact with the explosive fire spirit rock on their backs. A roar suddenly sounded, accompanied by violent and chaotic fluctuations of spiritual energy. In order to create enough spiritual power fluctuations to attract the insectoids, each of the Divine Sea Realm insectoids under Lu Ye's command carried at least 100 explosive fire spirit rocks. The bigger the insectoid, the more explosive fire spirit rocks they carried. For example, the centipede-like insectoid carried thousands of explosive fire spirit rocks on its back. As long as the power of one explosive fire spirit rock was activated, the rest of the explosive fire spirit rocks would explode in a short time. When the flames rose into the sky, it was like a handful of salt was sprinkled into a pot of oil. The insectoids within a 100-mile radius immediately became restless. Almost all the insectoids who sensed the spiritual power fluctuations became excited at this moment. Driven by their instincts, they gathered toward the source of the spiritual power fluctuations. Boom, 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 the sound of explosions kept coming out. Pillars of flame soared into the sky. The location where the more than 200 Divine Sea Realm insectoids were, it became the focus of the insectoid army. Not only were the insectoids on the ground attracted, but the insectoids flying in the sky were also attracted. Originally, there were still some insectoids flying around Lu Yi. However, at this moment, they all became solemn. When he looked up, there was no one around him except for the sacred beetle he was riding. Even the sacred beetle he planted with the soul manipulation spirit soul seemed to be attracted by the spiritual power fluctuations. If he had not ordered it to suppress it, it would have carried him to the nearest source of the spiritual power fluctuations. If that was the case, then it would be fun. When he looked down, the originally bustling door was now empty. There was not a single insectoid to be seen. The plan was executed much more smoothly than expected. The sound of explosions continued. More than 200 Divine Sea Realm insectoids scattered in different locations could not all move at the same time. After all, there was a sequence, which could buy him more time. The space inside the door fluctuated slightly. Several figures rushed out of the door almost at the same time. The leaders were still Pang Jin and Long Bo. Because they did not know what was going on here, they were all prepared to take action. However, when they rushed in, there was not a single insectoid around. The closest insectoid to them was a few miles away, and it was still moving away quickly. This sudden scene stunned them. However, they immediately understood that it was Lu Ye's work. Pang Jin could not help but shout, "Well done!" Although Lu Ye's eucalyptus extraction had been approved during the Great Council, no one knew whether or not it would be of any use, and to what extent. Only now did they know that Lu Ye's eucalyptus extraction was more effective than they had imagined. Disregarding everything else, now that there was not a single insectoid in front of the door, the Vanguard Battalion could do whatever they wanted. More figures passed through the door and entered the insectoid's great secret realm. In just a few breaths of time, the Vanguard Battalion's hundreds of experts had all passed through. Act according to the plan. Long Bo ordered. The hundreds of people immediately spread out and slowly advanced outwards in a fan shape. The fluctuation of the space inside the door did not stop. After the vanguard battalion, the cultivators in charge of building the defensive line were the first to arrive at the insectoid's great secret realm. The cultivators who came were of different cultivation levels. Some were in the spirit sea realm, while others were in the true lake realm. They were array cultivators, and their mission was to set up all kinds of large arrays in front of the door. In such a situation, the faster they set up enough arrays, the easier it would be to reduce the pressure on the people of the vanguard battalion. This was undoubtedly a test of their attainments in array Dao. Once the array cultivators set up the arrays, the spiritual energy fluctuations became chaotic. Some insectoids had already sensed the spiritual energy fluctuations here. They changed their direction and rushed over. It could be foreseen that as time passed, more and more insectoids would arrive. Eventually, it would become a situation where an enormous insectoid tide would attack the human camp. Lu Yi rode his sacred beetle and descended from the sky. He joined the vanguard battalion's formation. With the sect master on the left and the missing moon immortal on the right, there was a sense of security. He took out Hupa from his spirit beast pouch and placed it on his shoulder. He also flashed out and came to the sect master's side. Master! Looking at Yi and feeling the spiritual energy fluctuations on her body, the sect master nodded in satisfaction. Not bad. After not seeing her for a long time, Yi's growth was undoubtedly great. This made the sect master very satisfied. Stay by my side and watch me kill in all directions. The sect master was full of lofty sentiments. Yi clapped her hands. Disciple will support master. On the other side, the missing moon immortal also transmitted a message to Lu Yi. Don't go too far away from me. Lu Yi laughed. Senior martial sister, I'm not a child. I'm a weapon cultivator. As a weapon cultivator, he naturally had to fight with his blade. How could he always be protected by others? The corner of the missing moon immortal's mouth curled up. She did not say anything more. Although the vanguard battalion's speed was not fast, it was not slow either. Soon, they had advanced to a position 5 miles away from the door. This was considered an encirclement. The encirclement behind them was the army's position. Before the defensive line was completely built, they had to rely on the masters of the vanguard battalion to resist the attacks of the insect race and buy enough time for the army to build the defensive line. Hundreds of people were scattered at the edge of a 5-mile semicircle, and the distance between each other was not close. This required a high level of personal ability. This was also the reason why the vanguard battalion only selected cultivators above the 7th order. If one's cultivation was lower, it would be difficult for them to take on big responsibilities. Once the insect race broke through the defensive line, it was very likely that it would cause an impact to the rear. The encirclement of the army's territory was extremely smooth. They did not encounter any obstacles. This was all thanks to Lu Yi. The explosion of more than 200 scattered spirit sea realm insects with exploding fire spirit stones attracted the attention of too many insect race clans, giving the army enough time to prepare. However, the other 8 continents did not have this ability. If they wanted to encircle the territory, they could only kill all the insect race clans in front of them. It could be said that in front of the other 8 portals, the war had already begun when the vanguard battalion rushed into the insect race's great mystic realm. The vanguard battalion needed to push forward while killing until they had advanced enough distance to stabilize their position and make enough space for the army to arrive. Chapter 11-12. Stop! Pang Zhen's voice was transmitted through the activation of spiritual energy. When he gave the order, everyone stopped moving forward. Lu Yi looked ahead. All kinds of insects were rushing forward like a tide, baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. Even if he was mentally prepared, his expression could not help but become serious. The distance between each other was getting closer and closer, and the spiritual energy of the vanguard camp powerhouses began to fluctuate. In the middle of the fan-shaped area, Pang Zhen was holding a spiritual talisman overflowing with spiritual energy. He threw it forward, and in an instant, muffled thunder rumbled. The sky changed color, and thunderclouds gathered and rotated. Kill! At the same time, a thunderous roar came out of his mouth. Thick bolts of lightning struck down from the thunderclouds, smashing into the swarm of insects like heavenly punishment. Amidst the wanton lightning, a large number of insects were annihilated. This seemed to be a signal. When the lightning struck, the powerhouses of the vanguard camp also used various methods to attack the swarm of insects. In an instant, different colors and powerful techniques were formed. There were also blade and sword chi crisscrossing. There were also countless rays of light from Imperial equipment shuttling back and forth in the formation, bringing about puffs of hot blood. The screams of the insects were endless, and they fell in droves. Fresh blood soaked the ground in an instant. On Lu Ye's left, the sect leader and Yi used their techniques together, but it was mainly the sect leader who killed randomly and Yi who was responsible for the attacks. The difference in cultivation was too great, and Yi's attacks could only be used as icing on the cake. On Lu Ye's right was the thinking moon Immortal, whose sword chi covered the sky and earth, wantonly shuttling back and forth, sharp and threatening. However, whether it was the sect leader or the thinking moon Immortal, in the choice of attack range, they took into consideration the area facing Lu Yi. They probably felt that he, a weapon cultivator, would not be able to perform well in such a situation. The Fire Phoenix technique and the Fire Dragon technique were connected head to tail, and Lu Yi was relieved. The attacks of the insects not only came from the ground, but also from the sky. Many insects were born with the ability to fly, and even if they did not have wings, once their cultivation reached a certain level, they could fly. However, under the counterattack of the many powerhouses of the vanguard camp, whether it was on the ground or in the air, all the insects were unable to come within 3 miles. Looking down from the sky, the 3 li of land in front of the vanguard battalion had shockingly turned into a land of death that no living creature could approach. Every insect that crossed the line of death fell to the ground. The insect corpses on the ground quickly piled up, and the insect blood converged into a river. This was destined to be a battle between you and me. In the face of these insects that had brought disaster to 9 regions for several years, the experts of the vanguard camp did not show any mercy. The pressure wasn't great. If the insect tide's attack was only at this level, it wouldn't be difficult to deal with the insect plague. However, everyone knew that this was just the beginning. The real pressure had yet to come. Not to mention the fact that there were not many large bugs among the invading insectoids. Even the giant bugs that had appeared in the video were nowhere to be seen. Moreover, as time passed, the spiritual energy of the cultivators would be depleted. Even the experts of the vanguard battalion could not maintain such an offensive for a long time. The violent and chaotic spiritual energy fluctuations attracted more and more insects, and the scale of the insect tide was constantly expanding. Even if the insects were constantly being killed, there were still more insects coming in to replace them. At this time, everyone was only glad that the insects didn't have much intelligence. Otherwise, if such a scale of insect tide appeared in 9 regions, the situation of 9 regions would probably collapse. At that time, it would inevitably be a disaster, and the people would be plunged into misery and suffering. Lu Yi only focused on the area he was defending. He alternated between using the Fire Phoenix technique and the Fire Dragon technique. He could also cast other techniques, but in the current situation, these 2 techniques were undoubtedly the most lethal and the most effective to form an area of effect attack. Since he had shown his ability, the sect leader and thought moon Immortal could deal with the area they were defending with peace of mind. They didn't have to be distracted to reduce the pressure on him. Behind him came the sound of skimming through the air. Then, one figure after another stood beside him. Without any communication, the new cultivators immediately joined the counterattack sequence. After the formation cultivators took the lead to pass through the portal, the reinforcements of the 9 regions army arrived. Most of them were magic cultivators, because in such a counterattack, magic cultivators could fully display their abilities. There were also some body cultivators and weapon cultivators who were mainly responsible for dealing with the insects that rushed to the front. At the same time, they used the twin chi-linked branches array disc to facilitate the magic cultivators. Each team was assigned in advance, so although there were a lot of people pouring in at this time, it seemed messy but not chaotic. There was originally a little distance between Lu Yizhi, the sect leader, and Thought Moon Immortal, but with the reinforcements of the 9 Regions army, there was a gap in the middle. The area was quickly filled by the new cultivators. The reinforcements were endless until the latecomers could no longer find a place to stay. With the support of these people, the second stage of the vanguard, the most dangerous initial stage, passed. Enter! Pang Jin gave another order. When the order was given, everyone stepped forward in an orderly manner. Looking down from the sky, the semicircle of 5 miles was advancing outward at a moderate speed, expanding the scope of the position behind them and lengthening their own battle line. Only in this way could they better display the strength of the cultivator army and kill the insects more effectively. Otherwise, if they were limited to this 5-mile semicircle, many people would not be able to find a place to attack and would waste their own forces. Moreover, for the entire army of cultivators in the war province, a 5-mile radius was still too small. The counterattack line was advancing outward, but the 3-mile radius was still the death line of the insects. Most of the insects could not cross this 3-mile limit. Occasionally, a few big insects would be lucky enough to rush in, but they would be quickly killed by the concentrated fire of the cultivators. As the battle line lengthened, the distance between Lu Yi, the sect leader, and Thought Moon Immortal also increased. This meant that it was difficult for him to get reinforcements from the left and right. If any powerful insects appeared in the area he was in charge of defending, he would have to find a way to deal with them himself. He spread out his divine sense and sensed a little. He found that he had 1 8th order divine sea cultivator, 4 7th order cultivators, more than 27th order divine sea cultivators, and the rest were all true lake cultivators. Such a force was not weak, and it was more than enough to deal with ordinary situations. In the beginning, the advance was smooth because even though the battle line was lengthened, more cultivators joined the counterattack. Therefore, in terms of attack intensity, the war province's side did not decrease, but instead increased. Naturally, there was no pressure. However, as time passed, everyone gradually felt a certain amount of pressure. On one hand, the scale of the insect tide had increased, and on the other hand, the battle line had been lengthened. Fortunately, at this moment, Pang Jin's voice sounded again. Stop. He was obviously in charge of the overall situation and gave the appropriate order at the right time. Otherwise, if they continued to advance endlessly, their battle line would definitely be broken first. At this point, they felt some pressure, but the pressure was not too great and was still within the range that they could bear. At this moment, the front line had been extended to a distance of more than 10 miles from the door. The main force of the cultivators was still the cultivators. After all, in such a defensive counterattack, the cultivators could play a greater role than the other sections. This was the advantage of having more manpower. The main task of the cultivators, the body cultivators, and even the ghost cultivators now was to borrow power from the twin chi connection array disk for the cultivators. In case the Zergs got close, they had to be responsible for protecting the cultivators. However, since the battle began, no Zergs had been able to break through the defensive line of the spell. This caused the cultivators of the other sects to have nothing to do. The cultivators who had Imperial artifacts could still activate them to relieve their boredom and pick up the scraps among the dazzling spells. The cultivators who did not have Imperial artifacts were really bored. After all, Imperial artifacts were used by cultivators to make up for their lack of offensive means when their strength was not high. When their cultivation was higher, Imperial artifacts would become useless. Lu Yi, for example, rarely used the power of Imperial equipment in battle. If he did use Imperial equipment, his saber light might be even more powerful than Imperial equipment. Brothers, let some Zergs come over. It's not easy for us to come here, so we can't just look at them. That's right. Brothers and sisters, we can't eat alone. Even if we don't share the rain and dew, at least let us exercise our hands and feet. Lu Ye, you're a weapon cultivator. How can you use such a good spell? Is there any justice in this world? The group of people was noisy, and the solemn atmosphere of the battle was ruined. The main reason was that there was no 9th Order Master on Lu Ye's side, so everyone was not so restrained. If it were other places with ninth-order cultivators, they would not be so free to do as they pleased. The cultivators followed the advice and deliberately let some Zergs come over under the vast and dense offensive. They thought that it would relieve the boredom of the weapon cultivators, the body cultivators, and the ghost cultivators, but who knew that the quarrel would become even more fierce. Hey, that sword cultivator from Xiaogui's sect. Looking at you, you're obviously not a good person. Sword cultivator, just use your flying sword to attack from afar. Why are you stealing our Zergs? Fellow Taoist, don't use your saber light. You killed the Zergs from 1,000 feet away. What's the difference between this method and a weapon cultivators? We weapon cultivators should fight in close quarters to show the power of weapon cultivators. Isn't the one who used the spirit talisman a bit shameless? Who doesn't have a spirit talisman in their hands? The quarrel was a mess, but in the end, no Zergs could get close to 1,000 feet. The weapon cultivators, the body cultivators, and the ghost cultivators criticized each other. Although they despised the actions of others, they did not hesitate to attack. It was a classic double standard. Saber light, fist shadows, imperial artifacts, spirit talismans, and various other methods. Be careful, there's a big guy coming. Suddenly, a cry of alarm sounded. Everyone also saw the incoming Zergs. Big did not refer to the size, but to the strength. The aura of the Zergs was on the level of a 9th-order divine sea. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Immortal Journey YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.